Did you happen to catch when President Obama spoke in Cairo about U.S. relations with Islam? He used a turn of phrase. He said, quote, America is not and never will be at war with Islam, unquote. In the past couple of weeks, his assistant for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Affairs, John Brennan, recalled that turn of phrase and emphasized that that was the case today and would be forever. These statements, I'm afraid, fail to appreciate a central reality about war. And that is, it's not like the tango where you have to have two to have one. War can be waged by a single country against another, even if the second, its leaders, its people, don't want to have any part of it. And I'm afraid that's the situation we're in today vis-a-vis authoritative Islam. Now, let me hasten to add, not all Muslims around the world are at war with the United States, or for that matter with any other non-Muslim nation. I think that by and large it is correct to make that point, as Mr. Brennan did in his speech to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, so as to make it clear that when we talk about authoritative Islam and its designs, its program of Sharia, as they call it, and what it requires all Muslims to do, namely to engage in jihad against us, that we're not talking about all Muslims, because not all Muslims embrace Sharia or follow its tenets. But the problem is that Mr. Brennan, in his speech here in Washington a couple of weeks ago, went further in characterizing the nature of the enemy we're facing. He said, quote, "We are at war with Al-Qaeda, which attacked us on 9/11 and killed 3,000 people. We are at war with its violent extremist allies who seek to carry on Al-Qaeda's murderous agenda, which he proceeded to describe as to replace sovereign nations with a global caliphate," unquote. Unfortunately, what this characterization of the enemy misses is the fact that everybody who does subscribe to authoritative Islam's Sharia program has to embrace this idea of a global caliphate. It is absolutely axiomatic in that Sharia program that the triumph of Islam worldwide must be achieved, and that it is the obligation of all faithful Muslims to follow the path of jihad to bring it about. Now again, let me hasten to add, not all Muslims, even within the subset that are adherents of Sharia, are willing to go to war to bring about the global caliphate. But, having said that, we need to be clear that if they do indeed follow the dictates of Sharia, they have to engage in that other form of jihad, what Robert Spencer has come to call stealth jihad, the financial or other means of advancing the same end state, the same idea of the global triumph of Islam, especially over countries like ours that are secular and that are separating church and state. So the point here is that if we fail to understand the nature of the ideological program, the agenda, if you will, that our enemies are pursuing, we're not going to understand fully, let alone respond properly to that enemy. This is compounded further by the problem that if we insist on not giving offense, for the understandable reasons that I've mentioned, to all Muslims, we fall prey to the distinct possibility that the people who are adherents to Sharia and who are intent on advancing their agenda through these stealthy means, most especially the Islamist group known as the Muslim Brotherhood and its myriad front organizations in this country and elsewhere around the world, we will find ourselves doing exactly what the Obama administration is doing right now, which is deferring endlessly to the proclaimed sensitivity of these Muslim Brotherhood apparatchiks as they seek to ensure that we cannot describe accurately, let alone fully, the enemy we face, and thereby make us that much less able to deal with that enemy effectively. Now, I just want to say there is some good news on this score. Specifically, Representative Sue Myrick, a wonderful congresswoman from North Carolina, who has become a member of the House Intelligence Committee and is a founding co-chairman of the Anti-Terror Caucus in the House of Representatives, recently convened a summit meeting of moderate Muslims and other experts on the subject, bringing them together for the purpose of enabling them not only to communicate and to seek to fashion common efforts amongst themselves, but also Sue Myrick introduced them to members of various agencies of the United States government with the express purpose of establishing that there are other people in the Muslim community with whom our government can be dealing, people who don't embrace Sharia, in fact, who in many cases reject it because they understand that it is a seditious threat, not only to them and the practice of a peaceful, tolerant form of Islam that they engage in, but a threat to the country that they, in many cases, came here in order to get away from Sharia. These people were able, for the first time, it seemed in some instances, to establish a relationship with senior government officials, many of whom, it appeared, had no idea that there were such Muslims out there. Genuinely law-abiding, tolerant, as I say, peaceable Muslims. People with whom they can safely work, as opposed to the Muslim Brotherhood folks that they have, to this point, largely embraced. The other important piece of good news is that a judge by the name of Lawrence Zatkoff in the Eastern District of Michigan a few weeks ago made a ruling in an important lawsuit now being brought against the U.S. government, specifically the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve, by an Iraq War veteran by the name of Kevin Murray. Mr. Murray's suit is about the fact, as we've talked about here at CSP TV in the past, that there is an unconstitutional activity underway to the extent that the U.S. government now owns, meaning all of us, taxpayers, own this insurance conglomerate AIG, even as that company is engaged in promoting Sharia-compliant insurance products. A prime example of the kind of stealth jihad that we should be very much concerned with. This lawsuit is going forward despite the federal government's efforts to have it dismissed. Judge Zatkoff believes there's sufficient merit to the case to have depositions taken and will then consider on the basis of those depositions whether to allow the trial to proceed. But for the moment, he has directed not only those depositions to be done, but also to be done on an accelerated basis. Our colleague here at the Center for Security Policy, David Yerushalmi, and colleagues of ours at the Thomas More Law Center, led by Richard Thompson, have been co-counsels in this case and will be leading those depositions, taking sworn testimony from various government officials, offering us all an extraordinary opportunity to understand what does our government know about Sharia and what is it doing about it. So whether in the end it's a product of the work that Sue Myrick and other legislators like her are engaged in trying to inoculate our government against the stealth jihad of the Muslim Brotherhood, or whether it is as a result of litigation like that now being brought against the government in connection with the AIG matter, we have a chance to learn a lot and to understand far more fully the nature of the enemy and what is making him tick, namely Sharia. And in so doing, I hope we will establish once and for all that authoritative Islam is at war with us. Whether we choose to fight back or not, they are seeking and are clearly intent on achieving our destruction. And only by being clear about that will we devise and implement the strategies that will enable us to prevent that from happening. I hope you'll be part of that solution. Thanks very much for listening.